I just need you to appreciate this expensive ass parasol. It's hard to show in this small camera, but it's fairly large. It's got lace underneath it, and it shaded me very well at the Ren Fair, which was sunny as all get out. It would honestly have been the perfect temperature if I wasn't wearing a mask, because I get really hot in masks. But there were a shit ton of people there, so I wore a mask. So we're here to talk about The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi, and this is a rave review. I really, really loved it. I haven't loved a non-romance book this much in quite a while. It was truly delightful. My favorite part was the main character, Amina. One thing that drew me to this book, I've been meaning to read it for a very long time, is that it is about someone in her 40s instead of her 20s or teens, like a lot of popular books, popular fantasy books especially. And it's about a pirate who has retired and has many legends about her, but not currently. She stopped all that 10 years ago to have a baby, and she's currently living in retirement with her baby, who's now about 9 or so, and her mother. And so the story is about her getting back into the business for one last job. And I really liked her motivations. She has somewhat of a motivation of wanting to be back on the job because she loved it so much, especially just being on a boat, that part, and being in charge. She likes that too. But that was not enough to have her overcome how much she needed to be there for her family and not risk dying and leaving her daughter alone. But when her family is threatened, that is enough to send her back out onto the high seas and risk her life. And so this leads to her rebuilding her crew, who she had dismissed and paid off after their last adventure, and having to re-find them and get them out of any trouble that they may be in. And I really loved that part. I really loved her relationships with her old crew, and also those individual characters as well. I'm actually semi-cosplaying as the first crew member that she recruits again, who is her poisoner and the only woman member of her crew besides herself. We also end up meeting her first mate and her mapmaker navigator. Along the way, we find out that magic is actually pretty common in this world, but usually small magics, and that big magic that we start running into is pretty uncommon and not something that Amina feels prepared for. I also really like about her that she is irreverent and not so religious that she follows the rules all the time, but she does care about religion. And she's a Muslim. Her spirituality is important to her without being very uptight about keeping all the rules that religion usually implies. I also really like that throughout the whole thing, her love for her daughter is really emphasized, as well as how much she cares about her crew and making it sure that they get back to whatever families they may have built in the end time that she's been away from them. I also really liked the plot line, the fantasy adventure. As you can see on the cover, there is a sea monster, and the sea monster is involved. I appreciate that that promise of the cover was kept, and I like the ways that Amina figures out how to do things that are set up by past occurrences and past advice and relationships that she's formed, rather than being deus ex machinas, which can happen in fantasy when the main character is up against such big evilness and the author has really built up how powerful the bad guys are. Sometimes they get out of it too easily, but I think that the way that was done here was really a good way of doing it. I also really like that Amina has those sort of, like, she's a pirate and she steals for a living, but she pretty much steals from rich people, and she also has a thing against killing. There was a sort of way of doing things that the pirates had. This is set in the Indian Sea, and I don't know which century, but it was before there was tea in the area. And during some of the Crusades. So it's sometime around then. There was a sort of way of doing things
according to the book, where pirates were sort of allowed by the local law in the various ports to steal, but if they started killing people on the boats that they were stealing from, they would be hunted down and gotten rid of. She always played it safe and didn't kill people and kept her and her crew safe that way. And it's talked about a lot during the book how, and shown, that the characters are schemers and con people. They are not fighters, not killers. And so being up against killers as our bad guys is quite scary for them. I would totally read more if the author wanted to write more about Amina. There was a room left at the end of the story, definitely, for sequels. But this came out a while ago, so I don't think any of that is forthcoming. I think it's a one-off, but I really liked it. This is by S.A. Chakraborty, who is the same author who wrote the Davabad trilogy, which I liked the first one a lot, but I didn't end up liking where it was going later on. This author's world building a lot before, and characters, but just not the plot line. So I ended up, not finishing that series, but this one I loved, and I'm really looking forward to anything else that this author writes, especially if it's very happy like this one was. This was definitely a fun romp, not nearly as heavy as the Davabad trilogy. So this one gets 5 stars for characters, for plot, for fun, for mood and setting, for magic, for the ending. If you've been putting off reading this book, but like the elements that you've heard of it, I encourage you to go ahead and pick it up. I particularly recommend the audiobook. There's a little bit of extra performance in the way some of the lines are delivered. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to leave an emoji, how about something pirate related like a skull or a ship? And I'll see you in the next video. Bye!